We're on the air.
All right. Welcome to the February 6th, 2019 meeting of the Kennebunkport Planning Board. We're missing a couple of people, which means both of you guys get to vote. I know Neil is not coming. I don't know whether Scott is coming or not, but
He is not.
Scott is not.
Yeah,
So
Scott is not.
you guys both get to vote. And all right, the only item on our agenda is item 181201, Aaron and Emily Cooper, Walsh Engineering Authorized Agent.
Do we have to approve minutes first?
Oh, yeah, we do. I'm sorry. They're wonderful. No,
I agree.
you know,
I found them just perfect.
I wasn't
Yeah.
here.
okay.
They were perfect, yeah, I didn't.
I make a
thought-
motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, anyway, as I was saying, Mr. Walsh is here to continue our public hearing. The last time we had some issues, which I believe have all been sorted out by now, but I'll let you discuss for a bit, and then
Sure.
we'll see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, Bill Walsh, Walsh Engineering. I think on the last meeting, we were discussing the beach use agreement and whether the Coopers were part of that or not, and we did go back and research that and found that they were part of that. They signed in, I think, last spring. They
Right.
became part of the agreement.
And the two
On either side
are
as
also.
well. Yep,
So,
and I think Ms. Chow reviewed the information, verified that,
Yep.
and felt comfortable with our approach. So with that, if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, what I guess I will do is open the public hearing, reopen the public hearing. And seeing no public, I will close the public hearing. So, I guess we need a vote to approve this, and then we'll have a finding of facts.
I make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Okay. And I happen to be in possession of findings of facts, which
Great.
Neil is not here, but he wrote them anyway, so that's good. Okay, Kennebunkport Planning Board finding of facts and decision. Application of Aaron Cooper and Emily Cooper as trustees of the Emily Cooper Revocable Trust Agreement dated April 30th, 2009. Walsh Engineering Authorized Agent. To remove existing stone revetment and replace it with a boulder revetment in order to stabilize the shoreline along Goose Rocks Beach at 165 Kings Highway. Following site plan review pursuant to the land use ordinance and final public hearings held on January 19th and continued to February 6th, the Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings of facts and conclusion renders the following decision. Finding of facts are as follows. 1, the applicant is Aaron Cooper and Emily Cooper as trustees of the Emily Cooper Revocable Trust Agreement dated April 30th, applicant, with mailing address of 31 Winthrop Road, Lexington, Mass. 02421. Okay, anyway. The letter dated January 8th, 2019, applicant has authorized Walsh Engineering as authorized agent for this matter. 2, the property has a street address of 165 Kings Highway, Kennebunkport, Maine, 04046. 3, the property is located in the Goose Rocks Resource Protection and Shoreland Zones. 4, the owner has demonstrated legal interest in the property by providing a trustee deed recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds, Book 16888, pages 920 to 921, dated September 12th, 2014. And further, as a result of a supplemental agreement regarding the joinder of beachfront owner to beach use agreement recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds, Book 17718, page 28. 5, the property is legally non-conforming, consists of 0.28 acres more or less and a single-family residence. 6, the property is located at 165 Kings Highway, Kennebunkport, Maine, is identified as map 33, block 1, lot 3 in the municipal tax assessor's map. In the application dated December 13th, 2018, Applicant proposes to remove the existing stone revetment along the entire shoreline boundary of the property and replace it with a new boulder revetment, which is proposed to consist of combination of geotextile fabric, a layer of 10-inch stone, a top layer of 5-foot plus or minus diameter boulders to help stabilize the shoreline. 8, the new boulder revetment and stabilization will not result in an increase in impervious surface area. 9, erosion control shall conform to the plan included with the application. 10, a Section 8 permit by rule application was approved by Maine DEP on December 12, 2018. 11, the adjacent neighboring property located at the northern boundary of 165, identified as Map 33, Block 1, Lot 2 of the Municipal Tax Assessor's Map, is purportedly owned by Robert Eisenberg and Leslie A. Eisenberg's trustees of the Green Realty Trust. 15-foot construction easement is proposed by applicant for purposes of working within the trust property for installing the new boulder revetment. 12, the adjacent neighboring property located at the southern boundary at 163 Kings Highway, identified as Map 3, Block 1, Lot 4, and the Municipal Tax Assessor's Map, is purportedly owned by John Gorney, Roberta Gorney, and Eric Gorney, the Gorneys. At a 15-foot constructed easement is proposed by the applicant for purposes of working within the Gorneys' property for installing the new boulder revetment. 13, applicant has requested no submission waivers from the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. 14, pursuant to the requirements of Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance, the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling in one or more of the following identified findings which would otherwise compel denial. And we have a whole bunch, the usual bunch, and they are either yes or not applicable. And there's a couple comments on the subject of flood hazards. The proposed new boulder revetment will improve flood hazard protection. And, excuse me, then the, let's see, flood hazard. Okay, on I, adequate provision has been made for disposal of weight washer. That's not applicable because they have they're controlling erosion and sedimentation. Then J, adequate provision has been made to control erosion and sedimentation. The finding is yes. There is a sedimentation control plan included as Exhibit L of the application. And the rest are just, fine, yeses are not applicables. 15, when a proposed development will be located in shoreland or resource protection zones, in addition to the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, Article 10, the townwide regulations in Article 6, performance standards for specific activities and land uses in Article 7, approval of the development shall also require that the board make positive findings based on the information presented, that the proposed use will maintain safe and healthful conditions, finding yes, will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation, finding yes, will adequately provide for disposal of wastewater, finding not applicable, will not have adverse effect on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, birds, and other wildlife habitat, finding yes, will conserve shore cover, visual and actual points of access to inland and coastal waters, finding not applicable, will protect archaeological and historical resources as designated in the comprehensive plan, finding not applicable, will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use, finding yes, is in conformance with performance standards set forth in 5.6 of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, finding yes. Any negative findings by the board means the application has been denied. 16, the application is otherwise complete. Conclusions. Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance mandates the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more findings that would otherwise compel denial. As noted above, the board makes no such findings. Decision, the site application hereby above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval pursuant to Article 1010A and 1012E. 1, the applicant pursuant to 1012E shall notify planning board prior to transfer of rights to construct an approved project. 2, the applicant must enter into 15-foot construction easements with the trust and the Gorneys in order for the applicant to work with both the trust property and the Gorneys property for purposes of installing the new border revetment and stabilization. Copies of construction easements must be provided to the code enforcement office before any work is to commence on trust or Gorney properties. If no construction easement is obtained from either trust or Gorneys, the applicant must work within the boundary lines of the property owned by the applicant. 3, the applicant must record the decision as proof of such recordation in the form of a copy attested by the Register of Deeds before any permits may issue, before any construction activity may commence. 4, the applicant will comply with all terms and conditions of the Town of Kennebunkport ordinance, as well as the Maine DEP and U.S. Army Corps of Engineer approvals dated February 6, 2019, Kennebunkport Planning Board. So, I need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the findings of fact.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'm going to sign this. And I just pass it, no, pass it over that way.
Pass it that way, I don't have a pen
All right.
with me, so.
Okay,
Kennebunkport.
Big drawings to sign.
so I have a couple other minor things while we're here. First off, how many people are actually going to be here on the 20th?
Far as I know. Yeah.
2, 3, okay, so
You'll get a quorum.
we'll get a quorum. I don't know about Scott. I know that Neil is not going to make it and you're not going to make it. But
Right.
we'll have similar count to tonight.
You're planning on being here? Yourself?
I'll be here, yeah. Yeah, I don't go anywhere till May. although-
I think
You're frozen in.
the
Oh, wait,
paperclip.
we lost our paper.
Yep.
There it is. Okay. Second,
I've already done.
oh, sure, sorry. Second subject, we have had a couple of meetings with Lori, the town manager, and Werner, and me, and one other planning board member. And I think we probably ought to briefly touch on them. The first meeting was a while back, and Ed and I met to discuss, to discuss the road acceptance and how to pull it into the subregs. And Ed did a nice job of pulling everything in. He and I have worked a bit on it, and we have turned in a draft to Lori and Werner, and it's gone over to,
Public Works.
no, not yet. It's gone over to Mike Klaus and his deputy to,
That's it.
well,
You all,
our notary's in the back, so, anyway, so, I guess that, I would hope that before we see another subdivision, that they'll get it back to us so that we can work through it and approve it. I think that, well, when Werner gets back, that Mike has some issues with wanting to, not with our words, he wants to do some definitions of public roads that may be a lot of fun, as I don't know if you want to talk about the definitions that what they're trying to do with roads.
I met with Lori and Mike, and what we'll be working on is, I think they were looking for a table that would also include a cross-section, that would show what the town would consider acceptable, for if somebody wanted to design a road to be a public road, that it would have to meet a specific cross-section requirement, so, in terms of, width specifically, so.
Something different than, that's in the regs now.
Mhm.
Oh,
Different from what's in the regs now?
Yep.
Oh.
And what, do they have a schedule for finishing that so that we can?
We just met the other day, so,
Okay.
I've got my notes, scribbled on a pad right now, so, but I'll put those together in a table,
Okay.
in a table format and bring those to the board.
Well, yeah, with the,
Yep.
we want to bring we were waiting to hear, should we bring the whole thing to the board?
Yeah, I think it makes
From-
sense just to bring everything all together.
I do
you know,
too,
you know,
yeah,
Let's get,
so-
let's get a table in there, and again, if there's any other, any other specific, requirements that, that they want to add in, once we've incorporated those pieces, then, then we can go from there. But
Okay.
Don't we have a definition of public roads in the land use ordinance?
No.
No,
No?
Uh,
Or
Are they,
streets?
no, this is, we're not diddling, are they gonna change the land use ordinance too?
no, I mean,
No.
I think the intent was just to have.
Change the
Just change it within the subregs, yep. And so just have, within the subregs, as a matter of, I think as a matter of process, so that applicants know upfront, if they're going to come forward for a proposal with a public road, that here's what the standard is.
I thought we had standards, but apparently we're
Yeah,
not on
what's-
cross-section.
Well, and
That's
what's,
what you're saying.
I think what's tricky, and this was part of our conversation, was that, when you're dealing with a municipality and the equipment that a municipality typically has, we're dealing primarily, for the most part, with collectors. And minor collectors and less such with, these side streets, And, I think it's not that, a narrower subdivision road is unsafe or inappropriate. It boils down to a question of equipment, and I think it does become a question of capital equipment on whether or not, if you're going to be accepting and having, more smaller, narrower roads, just, purely residential roads, do you have the right equipment to, to adequately deal with that, as it relates to snow plowing in particular? And I think that was really the question that came up with, with Reed Lane, was, a matter of the town's equipment, is really more appropriate for, for our main roads that we have, and less such for, smaller subdivision roads.
Can I just add that, for the board's benefit and the audience, Tom and I think tried very hard in the words we crafted for review and subsequently for this board's review and ultimate approval, hopefully, was that we got direction from Lori and her team that the decision as to whether or not a road will be made public is not ours. That because we're already in the position of reviewing and having public forums on subdivisions, it seemed the right place to very efficiently collect the data and to put the developers on notice that this wasn't a rubber stamp process, that there was going to be scrutiny, but that the ultimate decision is going to be made by the Board of Selectmen.
That a town, after the Board of Selectmen,
And-
put it on a
Well,
warrant.
That it's up to the Board of Selectmen to put it on a warrant at their discretion and ultimately then a town vote.
The
And
vote.
so I want to be careful that anything we put in,
And we,
in the subregs doesn't void that understanding.
Right.
yeah.
And I
So,
think Mike's right to say what he's looking for. We need to be very clear that says if ultimately you're going to propose this for a public road, at a minimum, it's got to meet this cross-section. So as long as it's in that spirit, I think it's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as you said, timely to do it.
Yeah.
in one.
Yeah, do it all in
Swoop.
one shot, and then it's,
Awesome.
so each new public road would be voted on by the
Yeah,
town.
they're-
Already is.
Absolutely, the town, they,
And that's the deal.
Well, Yeah, I don't think, I mean, the last one I think we accepted is Squire Lane.
Well, okay, so is there an appeal process? What if the town votes against it? Is there an appeal process they can go to?
It's a town vote. I'm not sure that there is a process for an appeal of a vote at town meeting.
So the expectation would be that they'd all be approved if they were proposed
No.
for a
I
vote.
don't
The
think so.
expectation is that, I think the expectation is, in general, we're not going to accept the road.
Oh,
fact,
Probably,
what-
that's the
what-
case,
what
you know,
we've
but that's not us.
what
We're
we-
just gonna tell you what it has to be.
okay, all right.
What we drafted was sort of, we sliced and diced the public road acceptance policy that the selectmen shared with us 3 months ago now, and crafted that into pieces that fit into our existing framework, that basically said to the developer, here's what the public road system is, public street system, here's what its purpose is, you know, to connect neighborhoods, to, you know, efficiently route emergency vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to propose that one of your streets is going to join this network, then you got to tell us what the purpose is. Not just tell us, you got to say what the purpose is, and as part of the review process, we'll share that with the town and basically start the process that will ultimately not culminate until there's a town vote. After, we say 80% of the
Yeah,
homes are constructed.
something, what it
Wow.
was,
All right,
right, the town vote comes after the road is mostly done, and
Okay.
the houses are mostly done, because
okay.
the town has no interest in maintaining a road where there's still heavy equipment rolling
Sure.
over it to,
Sure.
as you well know with our street.
Sure, gotcha.
But-
Okay, interesting, all right, okay.
Well, it has been interesting.
Yeah, wow.
It seems to me you could appeal parts of the town vote, for example, the wording of the question, things like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what what that
I-
process would be.
It's,
I mean,
it would be
it's-
very unlikely you would win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
It-
can sue anything, right, you
Right.
know, but,
There's a very clear process of if the Board of Selectmen choose not to put something on a warrant, there is a very clear process, through a, citizen
For
petition.
petitioning.
Right.
That would get it on the vote, put it on a ballot in front of the voters. But, if you have
Without the support of the selectmen, though, so.
right, exactly.
Good
And,
luck.
I mean, I think, and depending on what you see at town meeting, I think that would be one of those items that you'd want to be very careful to make sure that votes were tallied correctly. I think that's
That the
probably,
wording wasn't biased and.
Well, and again, I
Right,
think
so,
that's
you
why
know.
it's important that we look at the wording we're putting in the
Yeah.
subdivision
yeah,
regs for
and,
that
and
purpose.
this, will ultimately, as Werner said, or somebody said, it's gonna go to Amy before we, before we finalize our subreg.
I mean, and this is a good conversation to have. I mean, as we've kind of looked at this closer, I mean, we've found, over many years that, roads have been kind of brought into the fold, and there's been different processes and different levels of documentation for each one of them, some are very clear in terms of, that not only did we accepted the road, we accepted the right-of-way, we accepted the stormwater infrastructure and all of the maintenance that goes along with that. Some of those are very clear on that. Others, have an acceptance of the road, but it leaves you questioning of, all right, is that the traveled way? Is it the right-of-way? If there's sidewalks, does it include the sidewalks? I mean, so there are varying kind of degrees, over the course of
Will the
years.
language basically state if we accept the road, we accept all of these things? These are included in the package, or these are not included in the package?
Well,
Like your
Like I say,
stormwater
what
system?
I did what Tom and I did in the language was we gave we asked the developer to say what services they had in mind. That is plowing, right-of-way maintenance, et cetera, anything else, so as to allow for somebody to say, we only want this to be plowing, but we need to reserve the right-of-way for some other purpose, or,
yeah.
but not to tie that down in
That's
our-
been
in
part of our
language.
discussion, is instead of having this list of all these exclusions, that instead you just say, well, this is what we,
Have a
this is,
statement.
this is what we'll agree to, you know, and be very clear on exactly what that is.
But doesn't that put a burden on Mike to say, okay, which road is which one do we have, jurisdiction over the stormwater runoff of the
Yeah.
sidewalks and so forth? Because they could be all very different.
Well, that's currently what we have now, and the hope is that,
Current state of
the hope is
affairs.
that we don't, is that we become, consistent for the future, of what that looks like. Because right now, it is it's to varying degrees. Try to figure out how some of the side roads down at Goose Rock's work has been, has been a challenge, in terms of, what you have for documentation, so.
So does your document include resurfacing or I don't know.
This document is.
Sorry. But if a road was accepted, would that be included?
It
That would be
depends, I
part
mean-
of the discussion.
Yeah.
In other words, and agreement.
And I think at least in the subregs, what that does is it at least provides a path, provides a path to document what somebody's expectations are. And so even though it's not we want to be clear that it's not the planning board supporting the specifics of that, but it should at least provide a framework that when it comes time for them to make a request, that's already been documented, like that's, that the town already knows up front, what the intention, of what you're looking for is.
And the
Because
public-
it may very well be, hey, we just want someone to plow this thing.
And the public works people will have looked at it and commented, and the police chief and the fire chief and the code enforcement office will have had an opportunity to at least see it coming.
Yeah, I think in the past, what hasn't happened necessarily is that, when applications have been looked at, they haven't necessarily been looked at from the mindset of what happens if we own this someday, and what happens if, like, having to take a more practical look at it to say, all right, how does, how do we think our large plow trucks would navigate this, and where is the snow going to go? Those types of things, as opposed to, as opposed to a private contractor who might come in with, with a tractor and a snow blower. Absolutely. Because that's gonna look very different. So.
Okay. The second meeting was, after you and Nina were discussing Sandy Pines and what exactly goes into a finding of facts for a approval of a small, minor change to something we did a big one on before.
Okay.
And we talked to Lori and, again, Werner on this topic, and I think Lori was gonna talk to Amy to get a couple things straight. I think largely what we kind of concluded was that what you did was a bit of overkill, as I think you know, but that the best thing, I think, mostly to do is put in a line in the finding of facts that references the old finding of facts by, even to say it's book number, page number, that was, as it was filed, so that it's, so if we're just saying, hey, all of the same conditions.
That's actually easier. I thought we couldn't reference an earlier.
No,
findings
you
of
put in a
facts.
reference to an earlier one all the time, but just,
And just say
It's
that the
easier if you say book and
conditions are in
page.
effect.
No, it's good.
so that it's there. And, so I think that's all of the meetings I've had with Lori.
All right.
And, I think, other than that, I will accept another motion at this point
Motion to adjourn.
to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, and all in favor?
All right.
We'll see you on the 20th, I
Yeah.
guess. Those that are coming on the 20th, and